For the first time since I've done research with neuroscience, psychology, psychiatry, and all the other areas of interest, for the goal of becoming a neurosurgeon, the conditions in the world and the whole planetary hysteria for the brain and the control of the body with the restriction of the mind and brain have now taken over the aspiration and the purpose to help little babies with their brains and their minds and their bodies and to get them cancer free. For a social reward system and all else needed to not die at the hands of some bully or thug or gangster and not freeze to death in your apartment because you can't turn on the heat because, well, if you turn on the heat, you might throw up and then you die from vomiting and starvation. Not very much more would be needed to actually give the experimental data. Other than just saying, y'all want me to just show you? Then please, don't get mad at me when you find my dead body. I tried. And I went far. But the brutality has made a simulation and video game for a fucking object floating in outer space. People walking down the street in Capitol Hill, Seattle, Washington, laughing and having a good old time like the people over at Golden Gardens and Ballard playing volleyball together. Groups of people just walking and having a jolly old good time. Because they're making a stimulus for the person who hears them outside their window. They're doing what Italy's doing. And even more better. They're doing what is socially correct. I've now got to make a professional business decision and a personal decision, you know, hypothetically when the government eventually legalizes brain removal. Do I go for that goal and that purpose and that aspiration now to help people not be human anymore and just follow the rules of these folks and these people making us all, you know, if you're like me, a chimp they do tests on in their lab with little surgical knives, picking apart and watching everything they do, giving them a cigarette and watching them smoke and freaking probably kill themselves. And they're little rats. They're little dogs, they're little cats. And let a person flat out just adhere to their standards and be a chimp rat. People never get cold again like me. People never would have to go to the extreme of explaining, I can give you the last proof you'll ever need to know the person over there is a bully. In the clear and concise summary for why I would complete such a task. And I'd waste more of my time as a cancer survivor. I'd waste more of the precious few seconds, minutes, hours, days that I know I have, aside from the weeks and the years, maybe shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking because the chordoma tumor is going to come back and just suffocate me. For good. And I'd have to wait for the satisfaction and the end of the suffering. All the time knowing finally, I get to leave the simulation, the video game the world has made for everyone. People walking outside, in their groups and, communicating through windows and walls, going up to people's, private homes. In the middle of the night playing music outside, cigarette smoke 24 hours a day, weed smoke every other hour. They eventually, I think, fall asleep and then they wake up and do more. There's no word in any language to describe what I'm talking about unless you're in a place like North Korea where they just use their hands because they're so limited in what they can say, more so than here in the United States of America. They end up just staring and staring and staring like the woman did when I had my flashlight. And then they call the police. And North Korea will throw you away and never find you again because they don't give a fuck. But the Seattle Police Department here wastes more of your time, wastes more of your energy, and then go have their sirens go blue, 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 blue. All for the emotional benefit of the victim who refused to leave the person with the flashlight alone and made their eyes the law. The woman makes her noise the rule. A person can stare at the black, like the black on the camouflage, and stare some more and stare some more, and eventually visualize from what the brain actually does with the body. And the mind can train the brain and the body to do that habit and that choice for the reward and the stimulus the person has chosen and decided they want in their life. Consciousness. But people dying, people by the millions getting told to stay at home and shelter, and the people in Seattle, Washington just walk around like their social brain and their brain and their brain and their brain don't get pandemics. They are a part of the revolution, and the revolution always wins. Always. Never fails because they make more sense. And the people with bodies like me wither away and die from their abuse, their intolerance, and their constant speed of time where your brain just goes, whoa, those people really need a freaking cheeseburger. And then after the cheeseburger, they should look up in the sky and find out where we are now. Because in the old days, yeah, you could get confused and forget you're floating in outer space. But now people are purposely and consciously deciding they want to freaking trip out and hallucinate rather than seeing the star in the sky and the moon at night. But also want people like me to make them some precious beauty. Because if we don't, If I don't, well, then me, the bitch, me, the person need to shut up, gonna get fucked up. Gonna freeze to death. Gonna vomit to death. I'm gonna have to listen to that fat, ugly bitch, slut whore, who can't be called those names. Because this masculine, macho, aggressive, violent, nasty voice right now doesn't have as much worth, doesn't make as much dollars and cents as those big fucking tits and that big golden pussy. And my hormones, and my emotions are like an asteroid coming towards the planet and the horn outside telling the car, oh, too close. But in the old days in Arizona, people would pull out their pistols and start shooting each other in their cars, and they still probably do. And we'd watch Armageddon and we watch Deep Impact. And people would be proud next to each other when their hormones were normal and not emotionally controlled and visually and auditorily restricted. We had consciousness like the stars and the planets from astronomy telescopes. We had swimming pools where we sit by and talk. Now, people laugh outside in the streets and they get in groups and frolic in the pandemic coronavirus to make each other stronger together. But altogether in these conditions, not camouflage, not the wolf, not a dresser. Despair, depression, suffering, and a future where they're going to be the last humans on Earth. And they're finally going to be rid of people like me, who are so inconsiderate and such a destructive force for all time. And their robots are going to have sex with them, and their robots are going to keep them hot with lighters. And the user are going to do what I'm doing now, so the robot doesn't go over and murder the bully. And they're going to be in another simulation and video game. Except they're not going to have any more options like I do now. They're not going to have any more choices to be made other than more technology, more to do, more brain being sucked out of their skull for the benefit of everybody. The sun is dark in the day here in Seattle, Washington on Capitol Hill. The blue sky and the clear stuff are confused by the fucking nastiness and the decrepitness from people who say they are supremacy. They are gosh darn geniuses. And they walk up right behind you and they get up right next to you. And they damn near lick your freaking face and your skin and your clothes to get a stimulus and a reward for pain and suffering and peace.